Hello, students. We are going to be talking about Period 1 Pre-Colonial Economics. And this is going to be part 1 of two videos. Okay, so the Columbian Exchange was the exchange of goods, livestock, and disease between the New and Old worlds. American crops became staple foods in European, Asian, and African diets. Okay, so when we're talking about the old world, we're talking about Europe, Africa, and then the new world would be considered, North America and South America. So potatoes were sent to Europe, sweet potatoes to China, maize, cornmeal to all Afro-Eurasia dominated diets. Europeans also began large scale plantation projects in their colonies for cash crops such as tobacco, coffee, and sugar. Okay, so Europeans would have their colonies, and then they would make these huge plantations where they would grow these cash crops of tobacco, coffee, and sugar. To the Americas also comes domesticated animals. Okay, so North and South America, they brought horses, pigs, and cattle. And African slaves also brought rice and which were, okra was a vegetable. Triangular trade. So, the triangular trade was a system developed by the 17th and 18th century. Since most American goods were farmed or mined, slave labor was incredibly important to European empire for profit. So, they needed, because they were doing this intense labor and they needed cheap labor, that's why they used us, the slave labor to get the maximum profit. The cycle was to buy slaves from Africa, then send them through the Middle Passage to work in plantations, then send the goods to Europe for consumption or production. Some Europeans were also brought over as indentured servants that paid for their trip with hard labor, often an escape from poor European conditions. So there might have been, some Europeans who were really poor and they decided to, come over as an indentured servant where they would, work off their debt. The textiles, salt, or sugar were then sold to African and Asian markets. This, along with the incorporation of Spanish silver, created the first truly global trade network. So, what that means is, for example, Europe would take their manufactured goods and sell it to Africa. From there, they would pick up some slaves from Africa and then take them over here to the Americas. Then they would, have their plantations, and they would get all their, raw materials such as sugar, cotton, and tobacco, and then take it back to Europe. And that's how the triangular trade would continue. So, the impact of the exchange. The biggest impact on the old world were wealth and population. So the old world would receive a lot of wealth, and their population would grow. So Europeans began to not only control trade from the Americas, they now had to fight over and sell. Additionally, the food from the Americas was far more diverse and calorie dense. So there was a different variety of foods and it was more filling. Because of this, it led to a widespread population boom through Afro Eurasia. More people were eating, the population grew. On a more negative note, it also introduced the enslavement of Native Americans and Africans for large scale plantation work. Unfortunately, because the Europeans needed lots of cheap labor, they got Native Americans and Africans. They made them slaves in order to get the biggest profit.